kind of shows that the scene, was very focused, and that, I guess, between the bands and the fans and what was going on in that scene, they had their own idea of how it should look and feel and sound, and it's almost as though maybe it seems like it could have been a little bit guarded to where it's like, say a guy like that has got all these guitar chops. You would think normally that would be an asset, but maybe in that situation, it's like, nobody wants to touch this guy. So maybe that's why I had to go to LA. I don't know.
I was going to say, I think it's an asset if it's, the early mid 80s and you're part of the Sunset Strip scene in LA. The whole thing that happened in Seattle, I think, was largely a backlash against that whole kind of aesthetic. The whole aesthetic that you see in like Decline of Civilization Part 2, the metal years, like those LA Hollywood hair bands, like Seattle was all about like, fuck that. And kind of really going back to more of a, in the gutter, just, I don't know, down and dirty, just kind of rock and roll, a la Stooges MC5. Not a lot of fanfare, not a lot of bravado, not a lot of show, not a lot of hairspray.
I mean, that was true even of the metal scene. So when I moved to the West Coast from Montreal, I was touring with a band called Metal Church.
I remember them, yeah.
They were basically from the Aberdeen area.
Yep.
But they said that they were from Seattle, so that people knew where they were from. Because
I always thought they were from the East Side. They were from Aberdeen?
Yeah, Aberdeen. So I lived with them for a little while, and it was the most depressing place I'd ever been in my life. It was just like dark and dreary and gloomy. But the connection, what was interesting about Metal Church is even when we were out touring, we toured with like, Metallica and Anthrax and Megadeth and all these bands. These guys wore like Mac jackets. Like they were essentially lumberjacks, but
right.
They were playing metal music. And, even the punk rockers in Vancouver around that time period, they were wearing the same clothes, ripped up jeans. They looked more like punks or, than anything else. They really weren't part of that English, the Mohawks and the leather jackets, but they were all like DOA, for example, but they were playing the songs.
Sure.
They were part of the scene without, I guess, selling out or copying, a certain, fashion motif, if you will.
I've always thought that the Northwest music scene, regardless of whether it's punk or grunge or metal or whatever, really didn't have so much to do about fashion. I mean, later it became fashion, but we didn't approach it from that perspective. I always thought that it was just sensible clothes for it's cold and wet out, and we're broke, but like, I mean, people like, oh yeah, flannel. It's like, yeah, flannel's warm. That's, oh, long johns under shorts. Well, long johns are warm. It's cold and wet. And, if you think about it, all of those early bands from like Minneapolis, right? That I might kind of say kind of embraced a similar musical aesthetic. Bands like Soul Asylum and Replacements and Husker Du. Husker Du came from a little more of a hardcore background, but ultimately, these are all these hard rock bands that have a lot of the same sort of musical aesthetics.